Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D.
Brief.
This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
Oh, and you nabbed a really nice interview today. I'm proud of you. This is
Thanks.
a good one.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of this place, Batch Brewing,
I am as well.
over in Corktown.
I love what they do, what they serve, what they're about, their mission.
Not only is the beer great, the food is absolutely
Outstanding.
amazing as
You're
well.
not just going to get a pretzel and some nachos.
So you brought one of the co-owners here to talk to us. We have Stephen Roginson here. He is a co-owner along with Jason Williams of Batch Brewing in Corktown. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me out here.
And he brought beer.
Yeah,
I
see?
did.
I know.
What am I drinking here? Gentle Jack Jones.
Gentle Jack Jones is a brown ale. It's one of those styles that American craft beer doesn't really exist without and has kind of fallen on hard times. Turns out people love brown ales and people have been really into this beer. We're excited. It's also a Grateful Dead reference, which is something that Jason and I try and slide into the vocabulary every now and then.
Little extra.
Do what we can.
And I'm sipping on the Empire Pale Ale.
Yeah, that's a fun beer. So Empire hops are the first proprietary hop grown in Michigan. They were found growing wild in northern Michigan, and somebody grabbed them, started cultivating them. It's a really interesting hop variety. It's got some kind of noble qualities, herbaceous, and a little fruity, like kind of towards stone fruit. And we blend that also with some Michigan-grown Cascade. It's a pale ale. It's not an IPA, parading as a pale ale, but it is a balanced, crushable pale ale.
It's
Wait,
delicious.
I got a question because you used a word there that I thought was a dishwashing detergent. What is Cascade?
Cascade is one of the American noble hops. So Cascade, Centennial, Chinook. There are some hop varieties that are really important to how craft beer and most specifically pale ale and IPA have grown and developed these American versions. And Cascade is a really important hop. Most of them have been historically grown in the Pac Northwest, Yakima Valley, but Michigan's hop growing environment here is incredible. The way that we've been able to kind of vertically integrate agriculture as a part of the growth of craft beer has been a really fun thing to watch and participate in and support. So there's some great growers in the state of Michigan.
Do all your hops come from Michigan? Are they coming from different places?
Oh, they're coming from different places, but I would say about 75% of the hops that we get come from Michigan. We work with people like Top Hops in Goodrich and the Michigan Hop Alliance. There's a bunch of growers that we work with. I mean, ultimately, we're looking for quality and variety, and there just happens to be some really high quality growers and producers in Michigan.
That's a gift. That's awesome.
Is
Absolutely.
Michigan different from other states in that respect? I mean, where does Michigan rank in terms of
hop growth?
Yeah.
So it's a growing part of the hop industry. The Pac Northwest still continues to be really the leaders in that space, and there are a lot of international growers, obviously, German hops, English hops, but New Zealand and Australian hops are important. I think in the United States, we're the second region, but we're like a distant second. So it's been a lot of growth. And it's important to our local beer making, but nationally, I think most of Michigan hops stay in Michigan.
Gotcha. So let's talk about Batch Brewing. Talk a little bit about the history, talk about the mission.
Sure. Yeah. Started as I don't want to say an accident, but it was not. I didn't intend to open a brewery originally. I lived in the burbs for a long time. I've been homebrewing for a long time and slowly been moving south towards the city. And when I finally moved into the city, I moved into a really pretty, loft in a historic building with my now wife. And I didn't feel like subjecting her to the reality and messes of homebrewing in our kitchen was something that I wanted to do. And after brewing all grain homebrew, I didn't want to go back to, stovetop malt extract beers. So I started trying to create kind of a homework space, a co-work space for homebrewers. I just wanted to monetize my hobby enough that it no longer cost me money, but it was something that I could, share with people. And I couldn't figure out a way to do it legally. So I was introduced with, from some friends to somebody else who owned a building, launched a crowdfunding campaign, generated some interest and awareness. We won Hatch Detroit, and 19 chess moves later, we're open and 4 years old.
Wait, back up. This is a Kickstarter here?
Yeah, it was an Indiegogo. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We started with really no money. I mean, I'd professionally, I'd been a marketer in the beverage industry, but I had no, money to speak of. And we did a crowdfunding campaign, and we raised $25,000. And this is still, I mean, we're talking about, 2013. And, what was happening in the city of Detroit was still very nebulous. It was still very nascent. Like any idea was an exciting idea. And, dude from the burbs out of nowhere moves to the city and is, talking about opening a brewery in Corktown. People, perked up their ears, and we were able to generate some excitement, some awareness, and then went on to win Hatch Detroit, which was a big boost. That $50,000, that awareness, no joke.
Explain what that is.
Program.
Yeah. Hatch Detroit is a business incubator contest for Detroit. 200, 300, 400 submissions every year applying for the program. A board of advisors helps whittle that down to 25. Finally, it becomes a top 10 group of finalists, and then the crowd votes on it. 10 gets reduced to 4. Voted again, Shark Tank style competition, and then one final winner wins $50,000. Comerica is a sponsor, and a whole bevy of other support, marketing and legal and all sorts of different mechanisms to help people get their doors open. And it was really meaningful to our business. Not only the money. I mean, yeah, you got to find the money to get the doors open, but the awareness and the momentum and just what that does for an idea to legitimize who you are and what you're trying to do is pretty radical.
It sort of builds up an audience before you even open your doors.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
the awareness is huge, where
Yeah.
you just have people waiting to get in to your place because they've heard your idea, they've bought into it. So it's a lot of just this already built-in fan base.
Yeah, the anticipation was really important between Hatch and the crowdfunding campaign and our friends. Like when we opened the doors, it was a barn burner.
Yeah.
So to put this all together, I mean, you not only have to be good at brewing beer, but you've also got to be, there's a business aspect to it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we were pretty fortunate, coming into this. The skill sets that we had, kind of serendipity is a good wingman. My business partner, Jason Williams, is an old buddy, and we know each other through the music world. I was in a jam band, and he used to come and see my band, and we went to go see other shows together. Like, he's a buddy.
Yeah.
But professionally, he was building and installing and managing multi-million-dollar, packaging facilities for bottled water. Meanwhile, my career took me into vitamin water, which eventually took me to Coca-Cola, and I spent 15 years building some really exciting, non-alcoholic brands as a consumer marketer, and developing my chops as an entrepreneur, because that's how vitamin water was back in the day. It was a free for all, and you shot from the hip, and it was really exciting. But to be able to take all those skills plus, this dorky hobby I've been doing since I was 19. It was not cool in 1996. Like, home brewing was like, dude, is that going to make me sick?
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust to drink. Like, and then you get people to do it, and they go, it's pretty good.
What even craft brew was Sam Adams around back then?
Oh, dude, there was a really cool burgeoning scene. So Sam Adams has been around since the 80s, but then you think about Sierra Nevada and Pete's Wicked Ale and Rogue, and then there was this first bubble, all the Colorado breweries, Breckenridge, and Bell started in the 80s as well. There was a really cool early craft beer scene that got big and then kind of shrank back a little bit. And
so who were you looking to? Who was your inspiration?
Oh, all over the place. So the beer that really flipped the switch for me, where I was like, okay, I need to learn how to make this, was a beer called Maudit, made by a Canadian brewery called Unibrew, very Belgian inspired. It's a Belgian dark strong ale. That got me very excited about a completely different set of flavors. It took me a long time to learn that this is all about fermentation, not malt or hops. But then that led me into really exploring European beer, Belgian and German, Hefeweizen, and the entire spectrum of flavors that come from that yeast profile. And then the IPA range, that party started in, the kind of late 90s, and is still such a big part of craft beer. So, you learn about yeast, you learn about hops, you dabble and play. And pretty soon you have a vocabulary that you can make some beer that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just, you probably had a lot of like sleepless nights, a lot of just like chasing the information and perfecting. And
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you just really poured your heart into this.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a hobby, right? So it wasn't, I wasn't stressing over it. Like
okay.
the classic, don't worry, have a homebrew. Like that was the mantra. Like you make beer and you drink it, and sometimes it's great, and most times it's good, and every now and again you dump it out. And at the end of the day, it was a hobby, like cooking or playing golf or whatever you were doing. But more than a handful of times, somebody said like, "Wow, this is really good, man. This is better than what I can get." Why don't you do this? And after you hear that a couple dozen times and you get a wild hair, all of a sudden you start talking yourself into ideas. And then you own a brewery, I guess.
So do you,
Right.
do you have a beer philosophy that guides the brewery?
Yeah. So what I have been saying since day one is there's no sacred cow. That's not like a really public thing, right? That's not something that our slogan is beer makes me happy. Like beer is an expression of joy. And if you're doing it right, it should help promote joy while you're doing it. The people you're around, what you're doing, beer equals fun. But inside of the brewery and the beer philosophy, the thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves inside our team of brewers, Alex and Jesse and Al and Kim and Ian, the people that work every day on making our beer, because right now I mostly make craft spreadsheets. They're beautiful. They're handmade.
Delicious.
I harvest this data myself.
Right.
Anyways, we do have a very democratic beer making process. We all get to participate and share our opinions. And in the process, the thing we always go back to is like, there is no sacred cow. There is no single thing that we are unwilling to delete from our beer making perspective, other than this has to taste good, and we have to be proud of it. We want to use the best ingredients that we can. Ultimately, Batch Brewing Company is a place that we make the best beer that we can and try and create the best environment we can to enjoy it. After that, I'm willing to rethink anything all the time.
That seems good. Now, how'd you come up with the name?
This is actually one thing that I will say that I took away from Vitamin Water. Like, there's some simplicity to the name telling a very specific story of who you are and what you do, what your philosophy is. And the idea behind Batch Brewing Company is that every single batch of beer that we make is as important as a previous one. It's one batch at a time, and the ethos is neutral. It's not about an ego. It's not about a name. It's not about the geography. It's about what we do. And the most common thing that anybody does at a brewery is make another batch of beer.
Yeah. Plus, you got that nice alliteration going.
Yeah,
Batch
that too.
brewing. Yeah.
So are there beers that are always on tap, and then are there others that come and go? Are there things that
sure
you do
seasonal,
once and you're like never again?
All of those things, and it's not that they're all there. There are many beers that are always on tap, but we're about to celebrate our fourth birthday. So in February we'll be 4 years old, and there are a couple of beers that have stood the test, and people are disappointed when they go off tap. Coincidentally, the market likes when we distribute them. So more times than not, you'll find Empire Pale Ale on tap. Gentle Jack Jones has become a beer that is going to be around. Anton's Animals, which is a Berliner Weiss, and the Audacity, which is a Kolsch, an easy drinking yellow fizzy beer, are usually on the menu. Centennial Pils is also another one that's coming in and out, another Michigan grown hop. Those beers, I would say more times than not, are going to be on tap. We try and keep about 20 beers on tap, so that leaves a lot of room for variety. Some seasonal stuff, the Handsome Strangers, and Blood and Orange Out, and Low End Theory, and Dick Smasher. The beers that you see, they come on, and then they're not there the next time you come on. Those seasonal beers. Many of them, now 4 years in, we've made 3 or 4 years in a row. And then there's a lot of experimentation, things that are one-offs, or things that we'll do a version each year. Doppelbock, we do an event every year. This will be only our second year, but Stark Beer Festival is kind of the antithesis of Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest is big volumes of, kind of lower ABV crushable beer. Stark Beer Fest is big strong beers, Doppelbock, and then we also do all of our big, high gravity beers. Experimentation is a lot of fun for us. So that's been a really cool thing to do with the expansion pack.
So I want to get to the expansion pack, but tell me about how that experimentation works. I mean, you guys all sit around in your weekly staff meeting and go, who's got an idea for a beer this week? Or
we exactly do that thing.
Do you really?
Yeah, I go. We start every Monday. We do Monday is an opportunity for us to really reconnect. Look at the schedule. There'll be some cellar work. There'll be some functional brewery stuff done. But usually what we do is we talk through the schedule, weeks in advance, what's working, what do we need to tweak. And we'll also do some sensory stuff. So Kim, our new general manager, and an acclaimed brewer, she's been bringing this new quality control to what we're doing. A really formulaic approach to tasting our beer, talking through what is there, if there's anything about it that we want to change, what is it? How do we do it? We do that on a weekly basis. So that part of the Monday thing is, anybody have any cool ideas? And once a month we do a recipe writing session. Sometimes it happens a little more spontaneously, but sometimes, the goal is once a month we sit down and say, these are these 4 beer concepts we want to hash out. Everyone's been thinking about it. We've been talking about it. How are we going to approach making this fill in the blank thing? So it's cool.
That sounds so much better than my staff meetings.
I know, completely. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the expansion packs, because I was lucky enough to get one for my birthday from my podcast co-host, which I'm really excited about. All I've done so far is fill out the form online. So explain what this is and how it all works.
Yeah, so I'm also very excited you got one of those. It's actually really important. This was a little bit of us making lemonade out of a bad situation, but when you're a small business and you're growing, there's potential pitfalls, and we ran into a situation where a vendor went out of business, and we're on the precipice of losing a significant amount of money. So the idea was to use the equipment that we had to generate incremental revenue. This isn't something that we had planned to do before. This is a way to basically front load our coffers with your money. That's the idea, right? You're going to prepay for a year worth of beer, a 4-pack every month. I get that money so I can invest it in growing our business. That money that has since vanished. The idea of doing these unique beers every month was really exciting to a lot of people. So we're going to release a different beer every month through the expansion pack that will be available only to expansion pack subscribers. So right now we're doing 450 subscriptions.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah. And there are 29 or 28 subscriptions left. That's it.
So if people want to snag those last subscriptions,
better do that real quick.
They gotta get online and get them.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just you. Steve Johnson mentioned this from
as a gift,
Motor City Brewing
idea,
Tours.
Yeah. I'm glad it's been so successful. I mean, I think we were just talking earlier earlier this week's show about there's something about when you're going to get this special thing that nobody else can get. There's that scarcity, that limited. It's I want that.
But
so
do I get a vote in the staff meeting? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, there you go.
by proxy.
So that was actually a part of. We just today we reserved one of the 12 beers as a customer, a fan pick.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
So the 12th beer is going to be a Bellini Brut IPA, so a peach. Yeah, Brut IPA. And a buddy of ours, Brian Shelby, he actually works for our distributor. And I realized at that point we need to change the rules for next year that you can't be an employee or the distributor. But regardless, Brian Shelby's a great dude and a really enthusiast about what we do. And he brought the game when it came to the suggestions. 3 of the top voted on suggestions were his. So you can't deny that inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fault a guy just because he works for the distributor.
Right.
But anyway, so he was a part of that staff meeting, got to pick one.
So the expansion packs,
Nice.
Are they raising money for the Funk Room? Is that what it is?
They are raising money for the Funk Room. That money is going to be deployed to help move that thing forward. So the Funk Room is our second location. It's on East Grand Boulevard, in the north end. It's kind of like the holy line of demarcation between many neighborhoods, right? The Milwaukee Junction and New Center and the North End. We are that area of North End between Woodward and 75 on the south side of the road. I've been working on the building for a while. We actually closed on the building. It was like a year-long deal. I closed on it while I was on my honeymoon in Cambodia on a phone at 3 a.m. in Cambodia sending text messages. It was pretty spicy.
Your new wife must have loved that.
She knew what she was signing up for. This was not a short courtship. This was we had 8 years in the bank. She knew what she was getting into.
Okay.
Anyways, we really reimagined, a nearly 100-year-old building, and it's functional. We're fermenting beer. We're fermenting cider. We're launching a cider brand. It's going to be a different brand and really I don't want to say a different philosophy, but a bit of a different aesthetic. Like with cider, it's going to be a really a lot of fun. I'm super excited about it. And then we have this space that is ready to become a tap room, small kitchen. Totally different food idea. Chef Matt's we're really going to be able to unshackle him from what we've been doing at Batch Brewing Company for so long in the kitchen and do something new, and to be able to create a new, restaurant and bar and gathering place for this neighborhood that has been so devoid of gathering places for, I mean, over a decade, almost two. So it's where the brewery started. When I wasn't able to homebrew anymore, I actually set up at the Jam Handy, which is like kitty corner. Yeah. And those are our buddies and really important to, who we are as a business.
Great.
So it's a great neighborhood. We're super pumped.
So speaking of the chef and the food, that's one thing that I completely appreciate about your place. You have really tasty food. You would go there even if you didn't like beer. But the fact that you can go have this really handcrafted, interesting beer, but you can pair it with something that really is inventive food-wise too. So was that an intent from the beginning, or did that sort of evolve, or how did it happen?
It falls under the category of intentional happy accidents.
Okay.
Everybody that works at Batch Brewing Company is excited about beer and is excited about food. Chef Matt is my business partner, Jason Williams' best buddy. As a matter of fact, Jason's daughter is Chef's niece. Like they go back to the old school. And when we won Hatch Detroit, we were working on opening in a different building, and Jason said, look, as soon as we're ready to do food, I got the guy. And I wasn't thinking about food. All I wanted to do was make beer, get this place open. Like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll talk about it later. We ended up leaving location A and bought what would become Batch Brewing Company, the old Porter Street station at 1400 Porter Street. And that place had a kitchen, a commercial kitchen, and it came with a lot of equipment. And even though we had to reimagine, what the kitchen layout was and what equipment worked and didn't, and put a lot of effort into it and probably more money than it was worth, it was exactly the opportunity to get Matt Johnson involved in what we were doing. Batch Brewing Company kind of repatriated two ex-Detroiters, Jason Williams, who was in St. Louis, and Matt Johnson, who was in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And they both came back to help do this thing.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So it is kind of a combination, because I know a lot of breweries open up, they're being a warehouse or something, and then they really have to think, well, do we want to do food? Because then you got to build a big kitchen, or do we want to do a food truck? And sometimes they just end up throwing out bags of pretzels because it's just
easy and check the box.
Yeah.
No, totally.
And I will say this happened. I'm still making my way through all the breweries because I've only been in the Detroit area for a couple of years now. And you were here a couple of months ago when I made my first trip to Batch Brewing.
Yeah.
And I came back and I went, I like the beer, but I also really like the food.
I know.
And sure enough, it was like 3 weeks later, Food and Wine magazine put you on a list of 20 craft breweries where the food is as big a draw as the beer.
You know what? We've all had those moments at the brewery where they like us. They really like us.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Chef Matt Johnson has been grinding it out in kitchens for his entire career. And when we got that acknowledgement, he was walking 24 inches off the ground. He deserves every bit of it. He is a grinded out dude who it's a scratch kitchen. He's running a scratch kitchen in a brewery. Any ingredients that we get that are not made on site come from a local market around us. And he cares very deeply about the food that he makes and where he sources his ingredients and the team that he's put together. And we're incredibly proud that, we are known for food as well as beer. It's important. Does
he use any of the beer in the food?
Oh, yeah. He uses beer as marinades and in sauces, reductions. He's really excited to be able to do that. And, I try and get him to. We've done 2 beer collaborations with him, and every once in a while I poke my head into the kitchen and say like, oh, there's a cool idea, and sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's dumb or whatever.
Yeah, but that's what you have to. You have to have an environment where you're free to throw out all your ideas instead of feeling like, oh gosh, I got to edit it or something.
Yeah,
so.
we try and create that environment for everyone, and then I impose my will upon people. I'm just kidding. I don't do that. I try not to do that.
You seem like that kind of guy. Yeah.
I lord over everything. Make it this way.
Will you explain what the Feel Good Tap is?
Yeah. When we were getting our doors open, we had a lot of support, right? Crowdfunding and winning Hatch and tapping into some other grant dollars. And very early on, it was clear that we had a responsibility to give something back to our community more than just opening a business or remodeling a derelict building or creating jobs or tax revenue or anything like that. Like what value are we adding to our community? And not only that, but inspired by some of the personal struggles that we have in our families. My mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis nearly 40 years ago. Jason's father lives with Alzheimer's. We have a responsibility as global citizens to add more to the world than we are extracting it from it. And so the Feel Good Tap was our expression of that. We refer to what we do as altruistic capitalism. We're in it to make money. We're trying to build a lifestyle
Cambodia.
and do our I mean, first of all, any of us, I don't know how much you make, but we get to live like kings and queens in Cambodia.
Oh,
it's
definitely,
pretty cheap lifestyle. But we are trying to at least be able to live a lifestyle, and in the process, we can do more than that. More than just make money, we can do some value and some good. So the Feel Good Tap was something that started as an in-house initiative. Brew a beer every month for a nonprofit partner, and then a portion of those proceeds go to that nonprofit partner. Before we even open our doors, I did a talk. Have you guys heard of Pachacacha before? Pachacacha? No. It's kind of like,
I don't think so.
It's similar to like a TEDx talk, but for like a very finite audience. And it was inspired by architects, and it's like slides, X number of seconds per slide. Anyways, I was invited to come to a talk.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine, Rich Rice, was helping to kind of facilitate those, and it was at One-Eyed Betty's in Ferndale. And so I got up and I talked about Batch Brewing Company, and we had just won Hatch and done the thing, and some people were paying attention. And I said, along with opening, we were going to do this thing, the Feel Good Tap, and I think this can be bigger than our brewery. I think that there's an opportunity to see this in every bar and restaurant and brewery in the United States. We got to start somewhere. Yeah. So we're starting a Batch Brewing Company, and Beth, who is no longer a part of One-Eyed Betty's, but pops for what's a new place in Birmingham? I'm sorry, Beth, that was terrible. She owns a new place in Birmingham, just opened a few months ago. She is one of my favorite people in the industry. I need to go visit her, but she walked up and said, "I want to be the first one on."
Oh, nice.
And so we've been able to bring a number of breweries and beer bars and restaurants on board. This year we'll raise about $120,000 for nonprofits through craft beer sales.
Wow.
And all in, since we've opened our doors, we've raised about $300,000 between all the different participants.
That's
for
huge.
a nonprofit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Huge.
yeah, I mean, the goal was like, we've gotten a lot of support and a lot of grant dollars, and we're going to pay more than that back to the universe. So it's been fun. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet. Who chooses the nonprofits? Like, do you work with the partner that's having the tap?
Yeah, there's a combination.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of different giving models, and we've recently changed it to simplify it. There are 2 different ways that we give money. Either statewide, where everybody that participates is raising money for one charity, one nonprofit that does, ubiquitous important work, the MS Society.
Right,
or the opposite, where it's a local, and every place picks their own local neighborhood nonprofit that is really meaningful to what they're doing in Milford, or what they're doing in Grand Rapids, or what they're doing in, Lansing. Mm-hmm. And so it's created a lot of flexibility to be able to do the hyper local, but also see a little bit of scale. Yeah. And it's been run by 100% volunteer force. So we've got a board of people. Ryan Beringer from Plant Moran, who's our treasurer, and he logs so many hours. And Josh Bartlett, a buddy of mine. There's a group of people that are dedicated. Carrie Veldman, actually, one of our big partners, is Hopcat. And the Barfly Ventures group, and she was helping to run their engagement and what we were doing for so many years that we invited her to become a board member. It is a volunteer force that works to grow a grassroots nonprofit to raise money for other nonprofits in the state through craft beer sales. So it's a lot of fun.
Amazing. And what's your geographic reach with that at this point?
It is the state of Michigan.
The whole state.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anybody in the UP. It's hard to find scale and overlap in the UP.
Sure.
It's like Marquette. And that's about the density for craft beer.
Yeah, just not a lot of people.
Yeah, and the other struggle is really to run an organization like this with the amount of high touch it requires to sometimes call a brewery and say like, hey, I don't know who your local nonprofit was for June. P.S. Can we have the check for March and April and May? Because it's hard to write a check sometimes.
Yeah.
So we're actually hiring. We created a job, like a legit. Out of nowhere, we created a job, and it's part-time, but it's 10 hours a week, $20 an hour. It's a great side hustle for somebody. So we're in the process. Members of the Feel Good Tap and also Batch Brewing Company, we're going to Kalamazoo later this week for the Michigan Brewers Guild conference that we do every year, and we'll be sitting down, reviewing resumes, making calls, setting up interviews, and creating a job out of thin air.
That's really
That's
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's ask about something that I want to know more about: beer slushies.
Yes.
Let's get serious now.
Yes.
Beer slushies. A couple of years ago, we were doing a Kentucky Derby. I'm from Louisville. Back in the day, I was actually born in Saginaw when I was very young, 6 weeks old or something. I was moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and my family has a deep affinity for all things bluegrass and especially the Kentucky Derby and mint juleps. We decided to do a mint julep beer and to do it as a slushie. So we rented a machine from a local vendor, Taylor Refrigerator, I think is what they're called. Great guys. And we rented this machine and had a lot of fun doing it. When we ran through the mint julep, they weren't supposed to pick it up until Monday, so we decided to put another beer in there. And we put, I think it was Blood and Orange Out. It was a blood orange wheat beer, and it was so good. And people were talking about it. The guys actually from Taylor reached out to us and were like, "Hey, we heard that was going really well. Why don't you hang on to the machine for another week? We'll come by at some point next weekend, and we just want to taste it."
Oh.
And so we did, and they were really into it. So we decided to buy a machine because people were talking about it. It's a weird investment for a brewery to buy a $5,000 ice cream machine, right?
Right.
But it's a lot of fun. And I will tell you, in the summer when it's 98 degrees outside and I come in, like sometimes I will pour myself a beer slushie and you hit that refresh button, like boop,
Yep.
and then I'll get into what I'm getting into. But it's a lot of fun, and it's another one of those little nuggets of evidence that like the spectrum between craft beer and food is a movable object, and how we think about craft beer and how we think about food, how we think about wine, how we think about these things live on a spectrum now. And back to that thing I was saying before, like there's no sacred cow. Like ask me 10 years ago about making a beer slushie and I would have poo-pooed you so hard.
Exactly.
Sacrilege. Sacrilege.
Yeah.
So it's fun for me to, be a part of like a really radical reinvention. Like we do Oktoberfest and our beers so deliberately, and then we make beer slushies, and those are on the exact opposite ends of the spectrum of tradition. So we like to touch all the bases, I guess.
Well, I'd imagine it's like something for everybody then. When someone can come to your brewery, say one of the people in a family of four is a beer aficionado. One's like, all right, I'll go with you. But they've got the food. If it's hot, they can try the beer slushie. Like, oh, I didn't know it, but I like this. And if they've got kids, it's a comfortable atmosphere where you are. They can hang out, so it makes good business sense too.
It does make good business sense.
Yeah.
And it actually has been a really interesting foray for a lot of people who were like really staunch, like elbows out, like, I don't like beer. And
Beer's
then they go,
not for
oh, but
me.
this is really
Yeah.
cool. And they go, do you want to taste what that tasted like before we turn to this? This is a Berliner Weiss. What's that? Oh, this is really tasty. Cool. If you like this, try this Goza. I like this too. Turns out you like beer. You just don't like yellow, fizzy, crappy, half-assed.
My girlfriend,
yellow lager.
My girlfriend absolutely fits into this category. She did not like beer before she met me, and then we would go out. And my favorite thing to do is to go get the sampler and to go try
love it.
different
Yeah.
things. And I love places like yours where I can try, 20 different things and Uber home.
Right. Yeah.
Only way to do that that one right.
But yeah, you got this educating the consumer piece too in a fun way, and so that's got to feel gratifying. And
It is. It's a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's why we do what we do. Like at the end of the day, like we are a bunch of dorks. We do what we do because we care to do something very specific, and there's also some belief that like we might be able to discover something that somebody else hasn't. Flavor
Absolutely.
composition wise. So
Yeah. What would you say is your most Detroit beer?
Oh, that one is a no-brainer. Okay. We do a beer called Second to Last Word.
Oh,
Have you had a
okay.
Last Word cocktail?
Absolutely, of course, yes.
The Last Word, for the listeners that don't know, this Last Word was a cocktail that was created Prohibition era at the DAC.
Yep.
1914 maybe-ish. And it is gin, chartreuse, lime, and maraschino. We do a kettle sour beer, so it's got that tartness of lime. We use gin and absinthe botanicals that we get from 2 James and a ton of lime peel. And that's the second to last word. So we're using botanicals from a Detroit distillery.
Yep.
That's pretty Detroit dork.
Yeah,
That's
I love it.
multi-level Detroit dorkness.
Let me ask how, you're in Corktown, and Corktown is obviously a place that's going through a lot of changes, and even more to come with Ford moving into the train station.
Yeah.
What have you seen in the time that you've been there? How has it evolved?
Oh, dramatically. I mean, we, Batch Brewing Company, kind of helped to prove that you don't have to be on Michigan Avenue to open a
Yes.
successful business.
Yes.
Up until that point, the only other business, there were 2 really, that had demonstrated that you don't need to be on Michigan Avenue to be successful. Mudgie's and Le Petit Zinc. Le Petit Zinc is now in Midtown because of that thing.
Yeah.
And Mudgie's crushes all of the crushing because Greg and what they do over there is, top notch. But we were the first new business to open in Corktown, not on Michigan Avenue in, many, many moons. And that really helped to reinforce the value of the other property that was not Michigan Avenue. And that people could take a risk, and you don't need to gamble on, the expensive real estate on Michigan Avenue. But if you can find something in proximity, you have a good idea, you can execute it well. If you build it, they will come to some level, right? You have to build it well. That was a really big initial change. And then there were like more, aside from Ford, the real like radical crazy thing in Corktown is what has happened at Old Tiger Stadium. So when we were there, when I came down there, Old Tiger Stadium had just like been torn down like a year and a half previously, and nobody knew what was going to happen there. And this big grant that had been set aside by Sandy Levin, not Carl Levin. Sorry. I apologize. Carl Levin, who I met a couple years ago and was I was speechless. It was really dorky. Carl Levin,
He's a legend.
He is legendarily
Yeah.
a legend. He's earned every bit of that status. He helped when they were still doing earmarks. He created an earmark to help save Old Tiger Stadium, and then the city went and tore it down. So there was this pot of money, and what do we do with this? And while they decided how they were going to reinvest it in this property, part of it was set aside to create this grant program, the Old Tiger Stadium Conservancy Grant. Businesses in town could apply for grants to help build, redo facades or HVAC or, the cost of opening a place. And we qualified for one of those grants. Meanwhile, that plot of land finally started to be redeveloped, and the Police Athletic League, along with all of the other investors there, like you're starting to see if you've been on Michigan Avenue in the last 12 months, dramatically different. There's a baseball stadium where Old Tiger Stadium existed. And even though it's not the original turf, it is still a place where kids are coming out to swing a baseball bat at, in the same confines that Babe Ruth did. Like you can't Ty Cobb, like you can't historically deny the significance of that. But along with that, there's retail being developed on Michigan Avenue and residential being developed on Trumbull, and that adjacent to the Checker Cab and all of those new places. We're going to have like 500 new neighbors and a 2-block walk of Batch Brewing Company in the next 18 months.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's
And
manna from heaven.
I remember when you first opened, I remember like, I've heard about this place. We got to check it out. And I remember I had to like kind of look on a map, like, where is it? It seemed like it was out in the country or something. Like
It's so funny.
It's a couple
like, wow, they're
streets,
2 blocks
but
off
it's
of
like,
Michigan. What the?
Oh, but like you didn't really make that turn. You'd go to Mudgee's,
Yeah.
but you didn't like make that turn around there.
Totally.
And now it's like Lady of the House and all these places but that's how much has changed just in the few years since you even or before you arrived, Seth. And then it's like, I mean, what do you think about people who live in the neighborhood and all that? Like,
yeah, so it's one of those like magical mixed bags, right? Like Corktown never really lost a lot of population. It's always been a pretty densely populated area.
Yes.
That being said, when I bought 1400 Porter Street in Corktown, I could have also bought a house for about $80,000. I couldn't buy a house in that neighborhood right now for, less than $350,000.
oh, it's nuts.
It is the classic supply and demand. There's a very finite amount of these beautiful clapboard historic 120-year-old houses in proximity to breweries and distilleries and great restaurants.
Walkable now.
Yeah, it's so walkable. So it's a lot of fun. It's startling. There's an ebb and flow. I don't know what's going on with the economy coming up soon. That's something I lose sleep over. I don't lose sleep over getting a brewery open or making beer recipes, but what's happening with our economy is enough to churn the butter.
Exactly.
What happens in an economic down? Because I've always heard that people will not go on vacation, but they'll still go buy a beer. They'll go to their local pub.
Local watering holes and restaurants.
Yeah, no, that so far rings true. And if there was any wood around here, I would wrap it vigorously.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That's a team player move.
Particle board.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was wood once upon a time. But the reality is, we will continue to do what we do, is to be responsible and responsive to our neighborhood. And if the, economy, turns down and we need to adjust our prices to accommodate people so they can come and spend time with us eating and drinking, we'll figure it out. In the meantime, when you do it right, a brewery, a restaurant is the third place, right? It's not your identity at home. It's not your identity at work. There's no pecking order. You show up and you have fun and you eat and drink. And if we do it right, that's what we're creating, a place where people get to be who they are.
All right. Well, Steven, you ready to play a little game?
Let's do it.
All right, here's how this works. We're going to ask you for a series of rapid-fire recommendations. Just tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
If you could restore any Detroit building, which one would it be?
Yeah, so it's I'm going to get the name of it wrong, but I think it's called the First National Theater. It's on Monroe. It's just east of Campus Martius.
Yeah.
I love that building. I love that building.
Please do that.
I
And
would
it's
love
just parking right
That is a
now.
gorgeous building. I had another one before that the brewery was going to go into, and then it burnt down. So we're not going to talk about that beautiful church on Woodward. That's also something I lose sleep over. But yeah, the theater on Monroe, no doubt.
I like
Love
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in winter. What's your favorite thing about the Detroit area in the winter?
My favorite thing about Detroit in the winter. Whew. I'm not going to advocate leaving Detroit, but yeah, DTW. Yeah.
I will say this. We have a great airport here in Detroit.
Amazing.
Oh, it's a
Airport.
world-class airport. And having done some international travel, like when we got rid of the that terrible terminal, the Smith terminal.
Yes.
That was 20 years ago, but the DTW is gorgeous.
It's
Yeah.
top-notch.
Absolutely. Comfortable. So yeah, you know what? Honestly, there's some really cool stuff to do in the winter. And I'll just give a plug for Frankenstein's on Wednesdays. Campy horror movies, and you bring your Steins from Oktoberfest, and that's a fun thing to do in the winter.
You, of course, do craft beer over there at Batch Brewing. Where's your favorite place to go for craft cocktails?
Oh, there's a bunch, man. I mean, Sugar House, Chartreuse. I mentioned. To James, Detroit City Distillery. There are so many craft cocktails in Detroit that you can shake a tree full of branches and sticks, and you point at a legit spot.
If you had a time machine, which moment in Detroit history would you want to go back to?
I think it would be really, it's a toss up. It has to. Oh man, I'm going to have to go with the '84 World Series. I want to be around for that party in the street. That would be awesome.
I was there.
Yeah, I was not.
I was young, but I was there.
Let me ask this: are there any Michigan beers coming up that are younger than Batch Brewing that you think should be on people's radar?
Oh yeah, and a place locally, Urban Rest in Ferndale does a great job. Zach and his crew over there are crushing. Likewise, if you've not been to Cellarman's in Hazel Park, they're also doing a great job. There's a lot of new breweries. I would say the answer to that is yes. Yes. If there's a new brewery, go check it out.
Exactly.
And go check it out when they're young, and then go check them out again. And check them out again, and you're going to see their learning curve and how much it changes, and that's part of the fun. And you get to be a part of the process and support small businesses and help to give all their employees, a reason to keep coming back to work and keeping the local economy healthy.
If you have out of town visitors coming in, what's the first place you take them?
It depends on who they are, but I'll tell you the last place I take them on the first day that they're here is Lafayette, Coney Island.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's only one way to do that, right? But I mean, it really depends. It depends on when they come in. I will say that I have a lot of friends that I bring in over Memorial weekends for Movement. I sponsored that festival for a very long time, and it is the single most important contemporary cultural thing that happens in Detroit. And I'm really proud of what the guys at Pax How have done to continue to grow and evolve that festival and its importance to the city.
It is amazing. I got the chance to go with our press credentials this year, and I'm like, I don't want to go by myself. I had the best time by myself.
What a great party. I mean, no joke.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. It's not a hard game to play, right? You're
It's
good
a
at
fun
this.
game.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel good about that. I
Yeah.
just got warmed up, too.
Expert.
I think we should have you on more often. Stephen Roginson, a co-owner of Batch Brewing, along with Jason Williams there in Corktown. Thank you so much for stopping by. This was fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Look,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the expansion pack. When do I get my first?
February,
Yeah,
right?
February. So our birthday is February 12th. And I think we're going to target a release right around then. So it'll be closer to the beginning of the month for each one. But February is going to be kind of in the middle of the month. That beer is in the tank right now. It's going to be dynamite.
And if people want to try and snag one of the last few, they can go to Batch Brewing.
Yeah, batchbrewingcompany.com or come see us in the tap room. There are 20-something of those things left. And I think we're going to end up doing like a 6-month re-up. So if there are people that are interested, we'll kind of put their names on a waiting list. And if we can justify doubling the size of the batch that we're doing, then we'll release some more. But yeah.
Well, happy 4th birthday, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Detroit's moving.
Keep up.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.